Hello, everybody. My name is Erik Wilde. I work as a catalyst at Axway, and today I say hello to Chris Hengst and Mark Pedersen. Both work as lead enterprise architects at HM Health Solutions. Hey, Mark. Hey, Chris. How are you doing?
Very good.
Very well.
Thanks for coming on to this show. Today we'll be talking a little bit how your API journey went. I'm looking forward to discussing a little bit how you went from where you wanted to go to now being, I think, a little bit where you really want to be. So let's talk about your API journey. Before we dive into this, just give me a brief overview of what HM Health Solutions is doing and where APIs play an important role for you.
HM Health Solutions is a platform as a service organization where our flagship product is a full service healthcare operations platform. Our flagship product we call the EHS platform, and it is critical for our customers to retrieve data that is stored on our platform, as well as they may want to bring their own digital capabilities such as a mobile app, maybe their own member portal. So an API strategy becomes critical to allow our customers to unlock data and provide those capabilities that they're actually looking for. So one of the biggest challenges we have today, when as projects come in the pipeline, the project team will build a service according to very narrow project-focused requirements. So over time, what happens is we have overlapping capabilities, right? One of the biggest challenges that we really have is there was not enough awareness of cross-program API visibility or APIs in flight. Not only APIs that we have as part of the ecosystem, but what else is in flight? What projects can align to, and rather than thinking about these APIs as very narrow project focused, kind of thinking about them in terms of products. When we first started, there was no awareness of a customer-centric API design first process. There was no awareness of the mindset of who is my customer, who's my consumer, what are they going to do with my API, and often that's going to shape the API experience and most likely the underlying technology stack.
So, Chris, I have a question for you. I'm wondering, when we talk about this transition from APIs, let's say, I would almost say more just like an integration mechanism to a more product-oriented thinking. How did you think that transition kind of affected the way how you were able to improve the product that you were building?
So yes, it's very important to recognize that the APIs that you're building are products that enable your business capabilities, and to manage them as such, and to own those products and drive their roadmap. So initially, in transitioning from a service-oriented architecture to more of, what are my consumer-centric capabilities that I need to be able to enable? So the focus needs to really shift from the owner of the data, simplistically, to the consumers of the data. The API products are about powering that customer experience.
I like the way how you kind of, turn that into a dichotomy, saying like there's service orientation and then there's consumer orientation. That is actually an interesting thought. So when our paths crossed, which I think was in 2018, when you started collaborating with Axway, how did your process change in terms of making this transition? You're going from just kind of integrating project-oriented focus to this more consumer-oriented one. And I think this one, I'll ask you again, Mark.
Sure. So it became clear that when we were trying to get our arms around what we have just from an API maturity level, we started off with IBM's WSR product, and it wasn't widely adopted, quite frankly. It wasn't very easy to use from a customer or for our own internal developer community. So as a result of that, our teams just weren't using it, quite frankly. So one of the things that we had to do first was get our arms around what we had. So we inventoried the teams. There are various mechanisms that we use to do that. We tried to figure out, well, if we're going to prioritize these with how to catalog them, we would work with those teams and figure out the priority. One of the things that we looked at was, what's customer facing, what is exposed outside of your various product area domains. And while we were working through that exercise, it became clear that this just isn't good API documentation. Most of them were legacy interface type, very technical oriented services. They were all REST. And it became clear there that this just isn't good enough. It's not good enough for our health plan customers. It does not create the low friction onboarding of a modern API program. So I would say that we had a bit of an awakening throughout that initial API cataloging process, because we realized that what we have really just isn't good enough. And that's when we became aware of the API first and API design first patterns as a means to achieve those customer-centric APIs.
So what you're saying is that just having APIs is probably better than not having any, but it's definitely not, by definition, good enough, right? It's a starting point.
That's absolutely right. And one of the things that we realized quickly is that, as you said, Eric, just having APIs isn't enough. The key to unlocking the true value add is understanding who your customer is and what they're going to do with it. Because working in a collaborative mode with your customers in designing a great API, that has the impact of that can be market differentiating, because now you're creating API experiences and APIs that customers really want. And as a result, most likely that's going to be a frictionless onboarding experience, and can be certainly market differentiating for your business.
So what was different about what you were doing before, or how APIs came into existence before?
The approach that we were using previously was centered on project orientation. So when a project request would come along, the teams would go out and try to find, services existed, but typically they would build a service or an API that was oriented specifically to the needs of that project. And because we all know projects are time and dollars based, the focus was really on just the requirements for that project. Rarely did they start to consider other consumers and start to think about how they could make this API that they were working on more friendly and more useful across the enterprise. The transition to API design first really helps to accentuate that, because as Mark's mentioned previously, it's really about a collaboration with your consumers. So it's a matter of pulling the right stakeholders to the table and getting started. But that's also a significant cultural and project change in our environment.
That was actually my next question I would ask, right? Where it's like, okay, this sounds like something that probably everybody would like to do, to have better APIs, more reusable APIs. I think we all agree that, at least in theory, these are things everybody probably wants. But then these things kind of come at a cost, or they have some prerequisites, right? And I think the organizational part is always interesting. And like you said, right, it's always important that if you think about APIs, that you think about who's consuming them. I need to talk to these people. These are my customers. So how did that work out? Like, how did you create those conversations so that you were actually able to build those APIs so that they would pass kind of your quality threshold that you wanted to get to? And Mark, this time I'll pick on you.
So the first thing that we did was we selected a pilot. We tried this process out through 2 projects, and rather successfully. So we knew we were onto something, but we also knew that we needed guidance from experts to coach us. So the first thing, or I should say the second thing that we did once we kind of tested it out on our own, is we partnered with the Axway Catalyst team, and we selected a pilot, a design first pilot, where, as Chris mentioned, we chose an API product. We chose an opportunity, and we worked with key stakeholders. There was a team of about 10 from both a consumer side as well as a subject matter expert on the data steward or the data producer side. And we worked the process. I would say in a matter of, so we had 8 to 10 people, in 6 hours of effort spread across 2 weeks of duration, we were able to collaboratively design an interface, stand up an API prototype, and deliver that API prototype to the customer. We did one iteration in 2 weeks. We did the second iteration in 2 weeks as well. And again, that's 2-week duration of about 6 hours of effort, 8 to 10 people. So we were particularly excited. We knew we were onto something.
I'm wondering if you compared that to how long it took you before, so to speak. Just a rough estimate,
Sure.
like how long would things take before?
It would take months. It would literally take months, because what would happen is we would have the project team would produce their requirements. We would have a service team that would build according to their static list of requirements, and that would usually take within, I'd say, anywhere from a couple of weeks to several weeks to get something actually tangible and testable to present back to the customer. And sometimes, they may not have gotten it right? Maybe there was a misunderstanding in a requirement. Maybe there was a missed requirement. So with the power of design first and prototyping, not only are we delivering, we're collaborating on an API design together with that customer, having them part of the process, but we're also introducing the power of prototyping so that when we do get it wrong, and maybe something is not quite as well understood as it should be, we can catch that early and we can correct it, rather than waiting that 6-7 weeks before getting a tangible implementation service to test with.
Exactly, and talking to the right customers, having them involved in that collaboration up front, helps them to bounce ideas off one another, things that they may not even thought of or communicated if they
Absolutely.
were looking at it independently or from a silo perspective. That collaboration is really powerful.
Absolutely, and Chris, I want to piggyback off of that, and we've witnessed that firsthand, and it's been rather eye-opening, because exactly what Chris just described, when you have everyone to the table, a lot of times what the customers are asking for, so that's what they want. But when you have the subject matter experts to really help them understand art of the possible, that becomes very powerful, because then once they understand it better, they can say, that sounds great, I want that. And that's how you really unlock the true power of collaboration, specifically for APIs.
How hard did you find was that for you? I'm really curious there. And Chris, I'm going to pick on you on this one.
It's rather difficult. In our organization, getting people's time, everyone is tied up on projects, working well beyond their 40 hours a week. And to be able to get the right people that have the right mindset to work on this kind of thing, it is a challenge. If you get people that are just interested in the status quo and not thinking about how they could evolve, then they tend to drag down the process. But if you can identify the right individuals in your organization from a consumer perspective, so if you have a consumer that's excited about making a change and recognizing that they can use APIs to do it, and then you can align with the team that owns that data and get them to recognize that they need to evolve, get the right people there, it really makes the process go more smoothly. But it is difficult to get their time, and it's difficult to align them. It took us several months to actually select a pilot and get a team that will work with us. But actually, it's interesting. The team that we picked first didn't have funding to move forward at the time. They came back 9 months later, and that was the team we went ahead with. And it was a very exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I do remember actually that, there were some times when you were just kind of trying to make it work, and it was not always easy to find the right people, but it's really worth it. I think that's one of the lessons that you're really telling here, is that if you have the right people, you can really make wonderful things happen, right? But you need to make sure that you get this magic mixed together, and then it actually will work. So I'm excited that you made this, went through this first process of creating a good API in a really short amount of time. I'm wondering now, what's next for you? So what are your plans for how you continue that journey?
Now it's really about the successful pilot being able to communicate the key performance indicators that we got out of that pilot and how we can help to change the mindset in the organization. Getting that communicated up through our senior management and getting people on board is still a difficult battle, but now we're looking to pursue a second pilot to continue the process. And it's really about pulling in more, we're focusing on product architects, to pull those product architects to the table, since they're responsible for the domains. We pull them to the table and educate them on this process and enlighten them on how this can improve things. That, I think, is really going to be the key success.
Right, and I completely agree with what Chris just laid out. I think that it's a matter of finding the right leaders to educate that can help you. And I think one of the things that's really helped us is when we were working through the process, Chris alluded to KPIs, we were tracking not only the business KPIs, the value add that will fall out of the collaboration with your key stakeholders, but process KPIs as well. And what I mean by that is, how long are the teams actually spending working together? How long did it take them to get to a prototype? How many iterations of that prototype did they go through? Because when you track those process KPIs, you can actually look at that and say, okay, well, here's how long it's taking our teams. We're not adding overhead to the existing process. We're actually making it better. So going back to my 6 hours of effort example, that was spread across 2 weeks because it was really time to get people together. We probably could have compressed that maybe into a week, but the point is, if we have those KPIs, we can continue educating folks and measuring and getting better and better.
One thing that I have to say here, which is a little bit self-serving, is that so we as a Catalyst team, right? We kind of coached you on that journey. That is what we like to do. And now I think what's exciting for us to watch is always to see, okay, we're doing this basically helping you to do it, because in the end it was you doing it. And now we're hoping, now you will just repeat it, right? And then like spread the good API word. Do you think do you see any things that might not go smoothly, or do you think, you're good to go now, and now that you've gone through this process once, you can actually repeat that relatively well, and will be able to kind of just create more of these good APIs within your organization?
I think it's about maturing as we go through this process, because every time we're going to learn more and we'll be able to become more efficient at it. The design process, I think we got a pretty good process right now to be able to design the interface for an API and produce a prototype. Out of that then becomes the rest of the delivery lifecycle. And there's components of that we need to focus on and try to drive out the right involvement, to get the right information to the right people so that can work more efficiently as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think parts of that probably will remain, specific to wherever you do it, and they also will evolve over time. So I think, if we look at what you've been doing a year from now, like also your process will have evolved. Do you have any suggestions for somebody, who's struggling with their API initiative, or whatever you might call it, like what they should look at? Like what was an eye opener for you where you said, oh, now we know we should do it like this and not like that? Was there something specific? Do you remember that?
I think one of the things that I would say is that, we recognized early on that we essentially have one opportunity to make this work in our organization, right? We needed to be successful out of the gate. So I would recommend soliciting expertise to come work alongside you and help mentor you through the process. Don't try and do this on your own. Because if you try and do it on your own, one of our biggest concerns were the process would get a black eye. And if that happened, then it would be frowned upon and the organization would continue down its current path. So to be successful, make sure that you partner with someone. And I'm not plugging Axway here. There's many, many experts out there in the API design field, right? We actually talked to many others, in addition to Eric and the Catalyst team. But I think that's a critical element here.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? There's a lot of expertise out there. This has been done before. So if you want to do this, just ask other people how it worked for them, and then you typically, I think, get a pretty good idea.
I agree, and I suggest it's choosing the right pilot. Choosing the right opportunity that will be successful and prove out the value add, and because you don't want to choose something that's too large or maybe too mission critical for your business for the very first time. So finding that right opportunity to prove out the process, and then learning, growing, and evolving from that, while tracking your process KPIs, of course, because that's what's going to help prove the real value add.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's a combination of, I usually talk about these proverbial low-hanging fruit, and I know that my colleague Brian Otten always talks about, don't try to boil the ocean, don't solve all the problems at once. And I think both are probably good ideas to do. Hey, thanks so much for joining. I think that was a really interesting conversation. I am looking forward to seeing, how things are going in the future, and I hope that things will be going well. And I really enjoyed our collaboration. So all the best, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you so much for having us.
Bye, everybody.